Hello everybody, my name's Marian. I'm going to be doing a short series of video workshops for how to paint in acrylics. The first one that I'm going to be doing is how acrylic works and what the difference is in the mediums of acrylic, watercolour and oils. So let's get started. Right, so the first thing we need is brushes. The brushes I use are the same brushes that you would be using if you was using for oils. So all these techniques I will show you will be to use for oils as well. These brushes are very springy. If you look, see, they kind of spring back. They're quite firm, because they've got to be firm, because you've got to push the paint about. These are quite cheap paint brushes, okay, but they're all the same. They're all very springy. They can't be soft because they do not work. So watercolour brushes do not work for acrylic. Okay, this is my favourite brush I've had for years and years and years, and it's a really good brush. It wasn't that dear, it was just a student brush that I've used for ages and ages, and it's last for ages. Right, the palettes, you need a palette. Now you need a flat palette of any kind. This is a plasticky one, it's very cheap, or you could use one that I use. I've already got the colours set out. I use one side for acrylic because it's got to be flat for the reason for the palette, so to mix the paint. Okay, the other side I use for when I'm doing watercolour, but this side I always use for acrylic or oils. You could use, because we're limited now to be able to get out, so we're limited now for things that we're going to use, so we're going to adapt things in this video, which I'll show you, which I do anyway most of the time. You need some kind of a container to keep your acrylics in, okay, because you don't want to waste anything. Especially now, we don't want to waste anything. If you've not got this kind of palette, you could use the top of the lid of a container or a plate. It doesn't matter, okay, as long as it's flat, that's fine. When you're using watercolour, you usually have little wells, but that's no good for acrylic. You need a flat surface, okay, for mixing the paints as well. Okay, the kind of paints I use are these big tubes because they're really economical. But if you've got the small tubes, that's fine. I'm only using big for demonstration purposes, but you can scale that down to an A4, okay. But I paint big usually, so I use the big tubes. We'll be using, the colours we'll be using, the primary colours, which is red, blue and yellow, which you can make any colours out of these. With white, white is your main colour. You need a big tube of white, even if you've only got small tubes of the other, because white is your blending colour, which I'll demonstrate at a later date anyway. Okay, so let's get started. I've done the paper that we use. This is just lining wallpaper, by the way, which is the best paper to use while you're learning. It's a big roll I've got. It lasts for ages and ages and ages. If you haven't got lining wallpaper and you've got some old wallpaper, you can use the reverse side of the paper and that will be fine, okay. That will do just fine for learning. At a later date we will be using a canvas, but for while we're just practicing, you're better just using a paper, okay. But it's got to be a thick paper. Even some drawing sketch paper is quite thick, and that will be okay for acrylics, because you don't use a lot of water on acrylics. It's not like watercolour. You can use it as a watercolour, which I'll demonstrate in a bit, but most of the time you don't use a lot of water, okay. Really, I just have water here for really just cleaning my brushes. Okay, so let's get started. Right, so I'll do these into 4. Okay, I'll fetch just the camera a bit nearer and then you'll be able to see what I'm doing. There we go. Okay. Okay, so just going to wet the brush, but this time I'm going to show you that you can use acrylic as a watercolour. So if you was doing something that you wanted it quite weak looking, or to build your colours up, if you were doing portraits or whatever, you can use it like, it's very, very versatile. You can use it as a watercolour. Okay. Okay, so it's very, very thin. You can put lots of water on it, see. The pigments are not very good if you're using it as a watercolour, because the pigments, they seem to break up, okay. The next one I'm going to use just a slightly bit of water, so I'll just wet my brush a little bit, okay. There's my colours, you see the colours on there. Okay, I've got plenty of water there, but I'm not going to use a lot of water this time. I'll drag some down, okay, and it will be quite thicker. Okay, so I'll use a little bit of water. I'm just demonstrating to show you how versatile it can be to use acrylic. Okay, that's all. And for you to practice how paint moves and how thick and thin you could have it. So you will get to know, there's no point just starting off painting and not understanding how the paint works, because you'll just be floundering then and you won't understand it. So this is why I'm demonstrating. So that's, see how pale that is. The paper's buckled, but that doesn't matter. It will flatten out. It's only lining wallpaper. We're only practicing, so that's fine. Right, so see how thin, and it goes thicker. I'm going to go even thicker still now. So put the paint on, and I'm not using hardly any water at all now. In fact, I'm using no water. The brush is still damp. But you've got to physically really push the paint onto the surface. If you was doing a canvas, you would be doing the same. But we'll get to canvases in a later date. This is just the first one to show you how acrylic works. You've got to really push it hard. Push it into the paper, or if you was doing a canvas, you would be doing a canvas. But you can see the different degrees now. Again, I'm not going to use any water. I'm just going to put the paint on the brush. Okay. Push it about. I'll show you the different mediums that you can use. So it glides better on the paper. But we'll get into that at a later date. Okay, now the next one, I'll just put that into water. Look after your brushes, because your brushes are quite important. The next one, we're going to use a palette knife. Now if you've not got a palette knife, a knife in the cupboard, as long as it's you know, a sharp knife with an edge on it. Okay, a cake knife, a cutting cake knife, or steak knife might be okay. So don't let it stop you. Alright, so now we're going to just, if you would be doing, just do a kind of a mountain type thing. If you was doing this in oils, it would be exactly the same. Okay. And to make it even thicker still, is you can get some nice detail on it. You go nice and lightly on it, whereas before you're pushing it, this is lighter. Okay, there's another one there, little one there at the back. Okay, you could leave that to dry a little bit and go over it again. So that's the different degrees, so you can use it really water as if it was watercolour. Add a little bit of water to get a little bit better degree of colour, or you can use hardly any water at all and get that really strong colour. And when you do painting in acrylics, not like watercolour, it doesn't fade. So whatever colour you put on, it fades a little bit, but very, very slightly. Not like watercolour. Watercolour fades quite a lot. But it's not quite as good as oils. Oils does not lose its colour at all. But on the whole, it keeps its colour. Okay? So I'm going to show you now. Right, so that, and it dries very, very quickly. And we've got to be aware of that. But there is some techniques that I will show you to stop it from drying so quickly at a later date. But for now, we're just going to carry on with what we're doing, okay? So now I'm going to show you now how, just stamp that brush off again a little bit. I'm going to show you now how, if you was doing it on a canvas, you could paint over it and over it and over it to get a depth of colour or a better colour, okay? So now I'm just going to put a little bit of water on it again, because we're going to go on to this one. Okay, so you can go over it quite nicely. So if you're doing some kind of seascape, say, or something, okay, you can go over it. You're getting your depth of colour, but sometimes the more layers you put on, most times the more layers you put on, the better the painting is, because you get your depth of colour without it being looking flat. Okay, so you could go into your white now. You're just dragging some white down. You could go over it with white. See how it blends in. Put the camera a little bit nearer and then you'll be able to see a bit more. See how it blends. So if you was doing a sky, say, it's just nice. See, it blends nice. How flat it was before, and how you can put like depth of colour on it. Okay, put a few little clouds in. You can go over and over and over it. A few wispy clouds, say. Use the edge of your brush. But I'll show you all these techniques at a later date. Okay, again you can go over these just the same. You can go over these and put a nice whatever you want to do on it. Okay, so you can go over and over and over them. So you could go over that even more. You could put a little bit more blue towards the end or whatever. Okay, you can't do anything with this part where you've done your palette knife. That will take a while to dry, probably a couple of hours or an hour. It might take. It depends on how thick you've done it with your palette knife. You can make it even thicker again, which I'll show you a different technique how you can make your paint even thicker to give more in depth, more structure to your painting. Okay, so that's it for your first, the first workshop. Just move it back again. camera. Very technical, aren't we? Yeah, so that's the first one. So I hope you'll join in the second one. I'll be putting on one a week. This is the first one of 12. I'll try and put one on every week, and then you can build up your skills. But try and practice these to see how it works. Just using a thick paper, okay, and of course your paints. And remember to put your paints inside a container, okay. You could scrape that off and put them on in a piece of cellophane like that. That's a wallet, you know, from paper wallet. Or you could put some greaseproof paper, put it in there, have the sponge damp, put your lid on the top, or your lid that you're going to be using if you want to use the lid. And that will keep your paints, if you can keep that for a good couple of weeks, 3 weeks probably, because you've got to have it in a container, otherwise that will dry up, that I've got on my palette, and you won't be able to use it tomorrow. The other thing you can do, if you don't want to do that, you can put a piece of cling film over the top of that. We can put a little bit of a sponge here, right, a little tiny bit of a sponge, and put cling film over the top, and that will keep for tomorrow. But yeah, try and keep your paints, because they are going to be expensive. We've not been able to get out. We've got to look after our different things. But I'm going to adapt things as we go along. So whatever we've not got, we'll find something in the cupboards. Okay, right. See you next week. Bye.